Not to keep people here any longer than they want to be, so I guess we will get started. Just how extra is extra virgin, and talking about olive oil. Basically, this is going to be a brief history of olive oil. What does it mean? What do all those things that you see on the bottle actually stand for? The olive is first amongst all the trees. In the ancient world, the olive, the date, and the fig were the three most important fruit trees. In a time before a lot of sweeteners, date, syrup, and honey were the two sweet things that people had. And we crave three things: fats, salt, and sweet. But olive oil is one of the most important of the three. It's one of the oldest cultivated trees, and it originates in Syro-Palestine, the Levant. It gets spread. That slide didn't come out all that great here. But it gets spread across the Mediterranean basin by the sea peoples, the Phoenicians. Carthage, Rome's great enemy, was a Phoenician outpost. It got started that way. There is a secondary area of domestication in Greece, but most of the olives that end up in Tunisia, Spain, Italy are all coming from the Phoenicians migrating through the Mediterranean. Olive oil was an important trade item in antiquity. Again, Syro-Palestine, early Israel, and oil is carried to Egypt. And they're talking about olive oil. Olive oil is the petroleum of antiquity. And it was used for many different things. Its primary use was as a fuel. All those oil lamps that they talk about in the Bible, all the Roman lamps, all the Greek lamps, all this lighting, this is olive oil. Command the people of Israel to bring you pure oil from beaten olives for the lamp, that a light may be kept burning regularly. It was also a base for body oils, perfumes, and unguents. My mother showed me there's a lotion bottle on the back table that one of the main ingredients is olive oil. What in Greek and Roman times, what the people would do is you would go to the gymnasium or the baths and exercise, whatever, and then you would scrape off the sweat and old oil, and that's what the person on the right is doing. He's scraping off the old oil and sweat with something called a strigil, and then they would re-anoint themselves with a new perfumed oil. Basically, this was the ancient version of deodorant. You went to the bath or to the gymnasium, you exercised, you cleaned up, and then you wanted to smell fresh, and so you'd put on a new perfumed oil. And the base for most of those oils was olive oil. Olive oil was used for anointing kings, priests, and prophets. You shall take the anointing oil and pour it on his head and anoint him. It was also the basis for soap. And I have a bar of olive oil soap at the back table. Nablus in Palestine was famous as a center for olive oil soap production. Like many traditional crafts, many of the factories have shut down because of modern soaps and such. I think this is the last factory making olive oil soap the traditional way. Basically, they make the soap, which has olive oil in it. They pour it on the floor, let it harden, then they slice it and stack it and then wrap it and sell it. People do this also in their homes. When I was traveling through Israel and Palestine, I found a family. What they do is they take some like 2x4 forms, put it on their driveway. They make the olive oil soap in a big cauldron, and then they pour it onto their driveway, let it harden, and then cut it up and use it throughout the year. You can find some YouTube videos about this factory if it is something of interest. The olive flourishes in a Mediterranean climate. It is an indicator species for the Mediterranean climate, which is hot, dry summers and cool, slightly wet winters. And the Mediterranean basin, obviously, the Mediterranean, some parts of Australia, the tip of South Africa, a little section of Peru and California are also areas with a Mediterranean climate. And you do have olive production in pretty much all of those areas. The olive is a rather slow-growing tree. It takes a while to reach maturity, but it is a very old tree. There are some that are at least 1,500 years old, and there are probably others that are many years older. It is hard to age them because it's very difficult to take a core through olive trees and count the rings. The trunk or core may rot away, but the tree continues to thrive because it sends up shoots from around the trunk. And in my travels throughout Syro-Palestine, I have seen many ancient olive trees that have a hollow trunk. The inside has rotted away. The outer part continues to grow. In a lot of places, they will fill those hollows with stones, whatever. Sometimes you will see, shepherds with their flocks in the olive orchard, and the shepherd is taking his nap or cooling off in the hollow olive tree. When a tree becomes unproductive, rather than destroying the tree, they cut the tree branches back, and the tree will send up new shoots and branches. And after a few years, it'll become productive again. And you see lots of very squat trees with new branches coming out of them. One of the people that I talked to said, we whacked them to within an inch of their life, and cutting all the branches back. And here is a stump with new shoots coming up around it. It's almost impossible to kill an olive tree. You literally have to pull it out of the ground, root and all. Your children will be like olive shoots around your table, referring to the fact that you cut it down to the trunk and it sends up new shoots and branches. as we in Michigan are very familiar with cherries. Like the cherry, the olive is a pit or stone fruit. The olive stone encased in a fleshy fruit with a thick covering. Inside the hard stone is a true seed or kernel. And the botanical name for this type of fleshy fruit gets its term from the Greek drupe or drupe. There's one species of olive, but like apples, there are many different varieties. It's all one species, but you've got all sorts of different varieties. And no, black olives and green olives are not different types of olives. Green olives are unripe, black olives are ripe olives. The process of olive oil starts in the orchards right about now. October through January, when the olives ripen and are harvested. And most people consider the best way to pick olives is by hand. There are some mechanical means, or people using rakes or beating the trees, but hand picking does the least damage. You want to do the least amount of damage to the branches and the twigs and the, where the olives are going to grow, hopefully, the next season. Usually the way it works is you go out into the olive orchard, you pick up the dropped olives under the tree, you put a big tarp underneath it, and you pick the olives so they drop onto the tarp, and then you collect them. I went out picking with one of my contacts. I'll have to stand like this. The guy in the white shirt should look familiar from this viewpoint. I went out picking olives with one of my contacts. It was a family affair. The family rented or leased the right to an olive orchard. And the mother, the matriarch of the family, was in charge of the procedure, and it was all the women, a few of the younger men, and all the kids. All the old guys got to go hang out at the olive mills. When the mother saw my contact bringing me in for the party, she just kind of rolled her eyes like, oh, stupid American. This guy's going to be worthless. We're going to have to watch him the whole time. By the end of the day, she admitted that I was a pretty darn good olive picker. And from anybody that grew up in West Michigan, picking olives is a lot easier than picking blueberries. They're bigger, and you don't have to worry about trying to get them into the bucket tied to your waist. They do you milk the tree. You basically run your fingers and just kind of pop the fruit off, just like picking blueberries. And then you collect the berries on the tarps underneath the tree and put them into big bags, which are then taken to the olive mill. They're taken to the mill to be processed. The first step is crushing. On the right side is, that right, 2 stone wheels, in this case being turned by a motor, but in antiquity being turned by a donkey or a mule. I've seen ones with camels, or a couple of strong people. So the stone wheels crush the olives. On the other side, the more modern mill, it's got a kind of a corkscrew grinder that kind of crushes and homogenizes the olives, and then it's pressed. On the one side, you've got an upright hydraulic press, the old-fashioned way, and you can see the stream of olive oil coming out at the bottom, going into the bucket. More modern mills have a centrifuge, which spins, sucks the water out, water and oil out. When we talk about labeling, the issue of cold pressed, the problem with centrifuges is they can heat up, and you have to pay attention to how hot it is, because heat will degrade the oil. What you get is a mixture of oil and water, which is then separated, and then the oil is finally bottled. Eating olives is not recommended, at least not olives off the tree. Olives contain a very bitter alkaloid, which makes it almost impossible to eat it off the tree. It is extremely bitter. I've done it once and only once. It is the nastiest, most bitter thing I have ever tried. And you don't see birds in the olive trees eating olives. It is nasty. As the olive ripens, the amount of this bitter alkaloid diminishes. So that ripe olives, black olives, have much less of that bitter alkaloid in them. The green ones are, for those of you that like olives, black olives are more mild than green olives. The bitter alkaloid isn't hazardous to one's health. It just doesn't taste very good. In the film Under the Tuscan Sun, the main character tries an olive right off the tree, much to the amusement of the locals that she's with. Olives for eating, usually processed prior to consumption. Eating olives go through a series of processes that are going to differ from region to region and also depend upon the variety of olives. One of the sources that I was reading, the gentleman was with a source in a village, and he asked the source, how many ways are there to, make olives for eating? And his source said, how many houses are there in the village? Everybody's got their own family recipe. The olives are usually cracked, crushed, or split. This helps break open the cells so that those bitter alkaloids can come out, either pounded, or when I was in Jordan, there would be roadside stands of people selling bags of olives to the city folks. And they had these handy little crushers, basically 2 drums, just with an opening just wide enough for the olive not to go through, so that when the 2 things spun, it slightly crushed the olive. So green olives, having more of those bitter alkaloids, usually need to be processed, usually in salt, saline solutions, sometimes with potassium hydroxide. What they'll do is they'll put them in a brine solution, leave them sit for anywhere from a week to a month, switch out into a new brine solution, and do this usually several times. Black olives, having much less of those bitter alkaloids, are often just put straight into olive oil. Many, many different types and varieties of olives for eating. What does it all mean? All those fancy bottles. Virgin olive oils obtained from the olive tree, usually hand-picked, usually under conditions that don't alter the oil. Again, I talked about the centrifuge. You don't want the heat to get too high because heat affects the oil, and which have not undergone any treatment other than washing, decantation, centrifuge, and filtration. And you can buy unfiltered olive oil. It's kind of like buying apple cider from the cider press, where you leave it sit long enough, you get that sediment at the bottom of the cider jug. Virginity measures the amount of acidity in the oil. Extra virgin comes from virgin olive oil production no more than 0.8% acidity. So it's the least acid of the oils. Virgin olive oil, less than 1.5% acidity. And then refined olive oil is usually by using refining methods that are going to affect the taste a little bit. More than half of olive oil is of poor quality. Quite often, this oil may be refined by using charcoal or other chemical filters, stuff like that. Quite often, it's labeled as pure olive oil. Olive oil, often a blend, usually lacks a strong flavor. Olive pomace oil is by treating the pressing waste from that original pressing, in Arabic called jift. So you're getting out a lesser quality oil, the residual oil that's in the pressing pulp, things like that. Is very rarely sold in the markets. This is usually sold in large cans to restaurants for cooking. You also have lamp oil, which is the olive oil that doesn't qualify as food quality oil. So this is the stuff that you can still find as lamp oil, and this is also the stuff that would go to perfumes and lotions and things like that. Infused olive oils are basically extra virgin or virgin olive oils that have been infused with flavors from other things. I know the cheese shop in Muskegon near the farmer's market sells a whole bunch of infused oils. Everything from citrus to chilies to rosemary, garlic, usually heated a little bit to help those flavors infuse into the oil. Cooking with olive oil. Olive oil has a low smoke point, it burns fairly easily. So the higher the cooking temperature, the more olive oil is going to break down. So it's good for sauteing and light frying. The more flavor from the oil that you want to get, that's where you would use olive oil. Kind of the same with baking. If you're not going to, get any taste out of the baking, use vegetable oil, whatever, use something else rather than a high quality olive oil. The truth in advertising. 100% pure olive oil is usually the lowest quality olive oil that you're going to see in the store. Better grades are going to have the word virgin in the name. Made from refined olive oils, kind of the same situation. From hand-picked olives implies that the oil is of better quality, since producers harvesting olives by mechanical methods are inclined to leave the olives on the tree longer so that when they harvest them, either by shaking or beating or whatever, they're going to get more of a crop. First cold pressed. Generally since there's usually only one pressing, the word first doesn't hold a lot of value. And then the word cold is somewhat ambiguous, because especially with modern oil mills, you've got the centrifuge. There are no international standards on temperature. But again, the higher the temperature, the more it's going to degrade the oil. So, first cold pressed is really a marketing term. Yes, they do second pressings, but that's not going to be food quality oil. Labeling. The label may indicate the oil was bottled or packaged in a stated country. For instance, all those bottles that say product of Italy, that just means it was probably packaged in Italy. If you look close to the labels, you may see that contains olives from Spain, Greece, Tunisia, etc., etc., etc. Usually the country of origin will be stated on the bottle. Product of someplace just means that it was packaged there. And unless it says, okay, this is Italian oil from Italian olives. So, taste. Much like wine. Do you like a sweet red, a dry white? Olive oil is going to be the same way. Do you like green olives? Or do you prefer black olives? What's your preference? Green olives, being more unripe, have more of those bitter alkaloids in them. They're much sharper in flavor, a little more bitter. The oils tend to be a little bit more greener in color. And sometimes you can find bottles that say, sharp or peppery flavored. Oils produced later in the season are made from black olives. They have a tendency to be more golden yellow in color, much lower in those bitter alkaloids, and quite often are called fruity in flavor. So it's really a matter of taste. What I look for, where is it produced? Country of origin. Is it an estate oil? Because there are a number of places now that are producing estate oils from olives that are grown on their estate, much like estate wines. Same thing. The grapes are all coming from one vineyard, that sort of thing. Flavor, I prefer green olives. To me, black olives just kind of taste bland and mushy, especially the canned, what's the brand from California? Lindsay, the black Lindsay olives, just bleh, mush. Some of my favorites are Italian olives in herbed oil. That's a personal preference. Also, what am I going to use it for? Am I using it for salad dressing? Am I lightly sauteing something? Sauteing vegetables, something like that. Something that I'm going to definitely be able to taste the oil. So part of it, what kind of food? Some foods are going to be better with olive oil. Again, how are you cooking it? How are you preparing it? So what is the best olive oil? Will ultimately depend on what are your preferences. When we're done here, I've got 10 or 11 olive oils in the back, and we'll open up the bottles and you can try a variety of olive oils and see what you like. The same thing, if you like olive oil, maybe follow some of the things that I've said here and just taste a few and find one that you like. It's much like, again, finding a wine that you like. Same kind of issue. Do you prefer green olives or black olives? You like that sharper flavor or more mellow flavor? So that is going to be basically up to your taste preference. A lot of this came out of research that I did in Jordan and Israel and Palestine. My copy of the book is on the back table, published by a British publishing house, on my research on ancient olive oil and techniques. And of course, I couldn't have done this talk without some help. My computer assistants. So when I can get to my mouse pad from underneath the paws. So questions, comments, wonderings. Anybody have any questions? Jeannie. That I don't know about. There is an international olive oil conference, confederation. The U.S. doesn't belong to it, but they set up all the rules and guidelines about the percentage of acidity, all the marketing terms, stuff like that. There is in Europe a confederation that regulates the olive oil industry. In the past, there have been some major issues. Some of the larger olive oil companies have been caught adulterating their oil with like canola oil and other types of oil. The big name brands, Bertolli and some of the others, again, those are all going to be blended oils. They're getting oils from all over the Mediterranean basin, and it's all kind of homogenized, just like milk, where you want it all to have the same taste, which is different from say, the estate oils or oils made from a particular type of olive, that sort of thing, which are going to be more individual in their flavor. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is there a country of origin that you would recommend one over the other with the olives?
Not really. Again, that's going to depend on what your preference is. The oils on the back table, there are 2 from Italy, but they are either estate oils or all Italian olives. They're not product of Italy, being a blend from other countries. So again, it's going to be preference, what do you prefer? Question? Yes.
When they're put into the centrifuge
Mm-hmm.
or into the spinning, at what point are the seed or the stones dispersed? They're not crushed.
Basically, it's this mash, a pulp. When they get,
So the stones are crushed.
it's all in there together. And then the centrifuge spins, the liquid is sucked out, and then the pressing waste gets.
So would that add to the bitterness?
Maybe a very slight little bit. The old traditional methods with the stone wheel doesn't crush the pits into as big or small fragments. So the actual kernel doesn't get crushed as much, but for the modern mills, it's really, really tiny fragments.
Is it common for them to be grown with other plants like in a vineyard?
No. Again, those bitter alkaloids in the olives, you do get some that drop to the ground. It's kind of like some trees here in Michigan, nothing's going to grow around them because of either the tannin in the leaves or the acidity in the needles, whatever. Some farmers will take the pressing waste and spread it out into the orchard. People have looked at it as an herbicide because it seems to keep down grass and weeds and stuff like that.
Is there a brand that you recommend or a way that you can tell if something's been not pure olive oil?
There's not really any way to determine if they're adulterating the oil unless you have a very good chemist. Again, my preferences are for the greener, more sharper flavored oils, and I don't really have any one in particular. At one time I was going out and buying I had a collection of something like 30 to 50 olive oil bottles of all the different brands that I was trying. So I don't cook as much stuff with olive oil as I used to since I moved back home. Thank you, Mother. Beth. They are a particular variety of olives, and one of the olive oils that I have back there is one made from Kalamata olives. Kalamata olives are usually eaten ripe, so they're usually a black olive, which is going to be much more mellow in flavor. It's going to have more of those bitter alkaloids out of it. One of the bottles back there is a California oil. Well, most olive oil is 100% olive oil. Well, again, they're probably not going to be importing oil from Tunisia or Spain or something like that to do a blend. So it should say on the bottle where the source of the olives are. So if it's 100% California olives, it should only say California olives on the bottle.
Is there any uniqueness in terms of the region where the olives were grown, like there can be with wines?
Again, it kind of needs the Mediterranean climate. Olive trees don't do well in freezing conditions. It freezes the sap and kills the trees.
Where do you say like olives grown in Spain as opposed to Greece?
Again, there's a lot of regional varieties now, just like there are apples. So a lot of times oils made in a particular region of Italy or Spain or southern France may be, those varieties. And that, much like Kalamata olives and olive oil, yeah, it's going to maybe flavor it a little bit, but that's all part of determining what kind of oil, what's your flavor profile.
Are you familiar with Dr. Gundry's oil?
No.
Did you watch for dates on oils?
Olive oil will degrade over time. You prefer a dark bottle and keeping it out of sunlight. Again, heat's going to diminish the oil. You can keep olive oil for a couple of years. After that, it's slowly going to lose a little bit, but you can keep it for a while. Yeah, much like a lot of things, the fresher you use it, the better off you're going to be.
You refrigerate your olive oil, doesn't it solidify?
It will solidify. It's not usually recommended to refrigerate olive oil.
But if they contaminate or if they use other oils, would that you be able to tell if it was?
I don't know.
What about olive oil that's sold in plastic bottling?
That I couldn't tell you. There's all the talk and issues about the plastics leaching into whatever's in the container, whether it's olive oil or, anything else. So, but I haven't done anything in that direction. Well, I popped into Montague Foods, and they actually had a couple of nice, single region oils. So it was up on the top shelf. So you can go to, I didn't look at Myers the last time I was there. I didn't look at Walmart, but you could, week ago Friday, I ran into Grand Rapids and went to the International Food Store, which had a whole bunch of Middle Eastern oils. And then I stopped at Trader Joe's, and they had a California oil and another good oil. You could probably go to Whole Foods in Grand Rapids. But like I said, Montague Foods had several, I didn't try them, but they were single country oils. They weren't the blends. So.
You may have talked about this at the beginning, I might have missed it, but average lifespan of an olive tree?
What's that?
The average lifespan of an olive tree.
There are some that are supposed to be over 1,500 years old, and probably some that are older, because it's very hard to date them, because most tree dating is done by putting a core through the tree and counting the rings, because the inside of a olive tree rots out. Kind of hard to do that. But I know in Jordan and Palestine, there are olive orchards that the locals say these are Romani, meaning that these were planted by the Romans. So olive trees, like I said, you can whack them down to the ground, and as long as the roots are alive, they'll send up shoots. Most olive trees are made from cuttings, not from seeds. Any other questions? Usually they'll put the year, not whether it's October or January. They usually don't put the month, as far as I know. All right, let's go taste some olive oil. Hey, Jane.
Thank you.